Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Happy Marine Mammal Monday. We're so excited to be live with you today. Today, we're going to be talking all about marine mammals of the Antarctic, which is really exciting and very fitting for these winter months and these cold days that we've been having. So, super excited to welcome you to another special edition of Marine Mammal Monday where we're going to be highlighting animals of the Antarctic. Very exciting stuff. And I'm going to give folks a minute to join the live broadcast. And while we're kind of waiting for folks to join, I'd love for you to leave us a comment and let us know where you're tuning in from today. I always like to see we generally have viewers from all around the world, and it's so great to see us all coming together. So leave us a comment. Let us know where are you tuning in from today. And if you're just joining us, I see we've got more and more folks joining. You're in the right place for Marine Mammal Monday, highlighting animals of the Antarctic. So, we're going to be talking all about that southernmost pole in the planet, which is mind blowing to think of marine mammals thriving in such a harsh environment. We'll get to talk more about that later. So I see we've got Matt joining from the UK. Welcome over on YouTube. Hi, Danielle. Thank you so much for hopping on. We have Elisa from San Francisco. That's where Crystal and I are located. Hi, welcome. And we've got Ocean Fox over on YouTube tuning in from Pacific Grove, helping to monitor the harbor seals of Pacific Grove. That's awesome. How are the harbor seals doing? Hi, Kathy. Good to see you. One of our repeat viewers always tunes in for Marine Mammal Monday. Good to see you, Kathy. Sally from Mendocino, welcome. We have Megan and her 8-year-old son from Novato. Welcome, Megan. Ellen from Capitola. Diane from Cambria, welcome. Stephen from Vancouver. Oh my gosh, and you were in Antarctica at the Ross Sea in March of 2011. So maybe some of these species that we're talking about today will look familiar to you. Very cool. We have Denise from Kailua Kona. Aloha, welcome. Priscilla from North Carolina. Wow, people joining from all over. It's so great to have you on today for this very special edition of Marine Mammal Monday. All right. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in here. We're going to be talking all about marine mammals of the Antarctic. But of course, I want to take a moment to introduce ourselves. Hello, my name is Laura Gill. I'm the Community Engagement Manager at the center. So I have the pleasure of overseeing our community engagement and outreach here in California, as well as out in our site at Hawaii, supporting all of our fairs and events out there. And today, I'd like everyone to give a super warm welcome to Crystal Krusik, who's our public programs coordinator. This is her first Marine Mammal Monday. Crystal, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much, Laura. Hi, everybody. I'm so excited to get to be here with you today. Marine Mammal Mondays, I think, are probably one of the cooler programs I've gotten to be a part of so far. I'm so excited. So, luckily, I'll be able to be on more of these in the future. So, hopefully, we get to be good friends. And I know some of you on a first name basis in the future, just like Laura does, which is really impressive. So I can't wait to get started and digging into some of these topics with you as the public programs coordinator. You'll see me here, but also if you get the chance to visit in Sausalito when we do eventually reopen to the public, I'll be there helping make sure that some of the stories of our patients get passed on to the public and that we're also reaching out to some of those scientists and other communities.
Thank you so much, Crystal. We're so excited to have you on as a new staff member. So great to have you. And as always, we also have the wonderful Katie Dianaccenzo helping to answer comments in the comment box. So feel free throughout the presentation to leave your questions or comments. We do have some fun Antarctic trivia in store for you today. So get ready to participate and do some guessing with us. All right. So, if this is your very first Marine Mammal Monday, we're coming at you from the Marine Mammal Center, which is the world's largest marine mammal hospital and education facility. So, Crystal mentioned that right now, unfortunately, we are still closed to the public, but hopefully reopening soon in the coming months. But meanwhile, we're still an essential business. We've been doing our work of rescuing, rehabilitating, research, and releasing marine mammals along our 600-mile range in California, as well as working with the Hawaiian monk seal at our hospital on the big island of Hawaii called Ke Kaiola. So we are a nonprofit, and we, as you might imagine, rely very much on volunteer support. We have about 1,300 extremely passionate and dedicated volunteers that allow us to do this life saving work, and we couldn't do it without them. So thank you to our volunteers that have stuck with us through this. And we are, like I said, we are have a wide range, about 600 miles in California, all the way from Mendocino County in the north, all the way down to San Luis Obispo in the south. So we're anytime you see a sick or injured marine mammal, you can hop on a phone and call our 24-hour hotline to report that animal to us. We'll go out, send a team to rescue them, bring them back to our hospital and get them better. And eventually, the ultimate goal is to release them back to the ocean. So that 24-hour hotline is 415-289 SEAL. Very easy to remember along California coast. And so essentially what happens once we get those calls, we'll send out a team of trained volunteers like what you see pictured in the upper left picture here. We have our equipment like these wooden shields to help protect us and kind of move the animal where it needs to go. We might use tools like these nets that you see here to help capture and put that marine mammal into a kennel or a carrier so we can safely transport them to our hospital locations. And then once on site, we have our amazing team of veterinarians and volunteers that can essentially do anything that you would have done at a human hospital for marine mammals. So, pictured here, you're seeing a sea otter getting an ultrasound. We can do things like that ultrasound, we can do x rays, brain scans, surgery, you name it, we can do it for marine mammals. And then, of course, along the way, we want to do our research. We want to understand why marine mammals get sick or injured and how we can advance marine mammal medicine to not only get marine mammals better, but also find solutions for how we can create a healthier ocean for all of us, marine mammals and humans alike. And in that way, we're advancing the global ocean conservation that we hope to achieve. And of course, ultimately, the goal is again releasing those healthy marine mammals back out to their ocean home. So we couldn't do this work without all of the wonderful people involved. And then what Crystal and I spend our time doing is the educational piece. This is also a really important role for maintaining our core work at the Marine Mammal Center. So we've got, while we're close to the public, we've got tons of online learning resources, including activities, one that Crystal actually designed specifically for today and this theme that will be posted on our website later this week. We've got virtual programs, curriculum, lots of wonderful resources. So if you haven't had a chance to check out our website, marinemammalcenter.org, take some time to head over there and see all of the amazing things, the resources that we have available. Now, I mentioned that we are still an essential business. We've been operating, continuing to achieve our mission and saving marine mammals along California coast and out in Hawaii. And right now, currently at our hospital in Sausalito, we have a handful of marine mammals. We've got some California sea lions, that's kind of the majority, two stellar sea lion pups, a few northern fur seals, and even a Guadalupe fur seal. So we do have 17 animals on site at our Sausalito Hospital that we're caring for right now. And you can also check out updates on these specific patients by checking out our website. We've got some great pictures and information about why they're sick and how we're helping them. So, with that, though, we're here today to talk about animals of the Antarctic. So, I wanted to take a moment to kind of set the scene and imagine that we're all traveling down to the southernmost pole of the world, taking a little trip, a virtual trip to the Antarctic. So, believe it or not, Antarctica, the South Pole, is the coldest, driest, and windiest spot on the planet. So, this is a really harsh environment to say the least. You can kind of think of it like a cold desert. So, essentially, really dry, really cold. And it's about almost 98% solid ice, and like I mentioned, the southernmost continent on the earth, and it's about twice the size of Australia. So it's a fairly large continent. And in the Antarctic Circle, so that southern tip, where sometimes one day or more each year, the sun doesn't set or rise because of how south it is, the tilt of the earth, and the rotation of the earth around the sun. So, this is a really unique environment. Now, the Antarctic is also surrounded by the Southern Ocean. So you can imagine the Southern Ocean like a continuous belt of sea that just surrounds the Antarctic, which you can see pictured here. But what's also really interesting about this ecosystem is that in the winter time, over half of the Southern Ocean freezes over. So you're seeing this time lapse here of that ice freezing. So that ice, that when it forms, is only about 1 meter thick, but it's still a really significant effect on the ocean, the atmospheric circulation, and the ocean currents that kind of help create our stable climate on Earth. And we'll talk more about the importance of that as we talk about the various marine mammals and people that rely on these ecosystems. So, the Antarctic environmentally is really interesting for all of those reasons that I just shared, but it's also interesting culturally because Antarctica has never had any indigenous group. So, really, it's just several countries that have kind of a claim to various parts of Antarctica. So, in this map here, you can see there's a Chilean claim, there's a New Zealand claim, Australian claim, French, Norwegian. All of these various countries have kind of a claim to Antarctica, but it's not necessarily governed by one overarching body. So, what did happen in 1959, there was the Antarctic Treaty. And that's basically where all the countries operating there decided to sign on and decided that Antarctica would be a continent for science and for peaceful purposes only. So that means that all of the military or industrial activities have been banned there. So it's really a protected place for science and peace. But even with all of the research and science and studies that are happening there, only 5% of that Southern Ocean is protected, which doesn't seem like a whole lot when we, as we'll learn today, we will learn how important the Southern Ocean is for our planet. But there are thankfully groups out there like the Antarctic and Southern Ocean Coalition that are campaigning for more protections and actually hoping for about 7 million kilometers squared of protected areas for the Southern Ocean. So, as we'll learn today, this is an ecosystem that is really vital to circulating heat and regulating our climate throughout the Earth. So, we are definitely supporting more protections of that ecosystem and of course the marine mammals that call it home. So now that we've kind of gotten a sense of Antarctica as a continent, this then leads us to the burning question of How is it possible that marine mammals, so warm blooded, air breathing animals, not only live there, but also thrive? They call it home. So, I wanted to share a few of the species that you might see if you were to visit the Antarctic. So, let's take a look at this little video here.
Let's talk about seals. Those playful, sociable, intelligent creatures who hunt and are hunted in various ecosystems around the world. On the Antarctic Peninsula, you're likely to spot 4 different species of seals. Possibly the most recognizable of the 4, Weddell seals are characterized by their large size and oversized eyes, which are perfect for spotting prey in deep, dark waters. You can spot crab-eater seals thanks to their long, slender snouts. While their name may suggest otherwise, crab-eater seals do not eat crabs. Their specially adapted teeth enable them to strain krill from the water. Silvery in color and somewhat serpentine in shape, leopard seals are considered the predominant predator of Antarctica, behind the orca. Their large head houses a powerful jaw, while their long foreflippers provide tremendous agility when swimming, making them accomplished hunters. Unlike other seals in the Antarctic, fur seals have thick fur coats, as well as little heads and pointed ear flaps. With extended front and hind flippers that enable them to walk on land, fur seals are comparable to sea lions. And you thought penguins were the Antarctic's main attraction.
So, a nice little video that just highlights some of the species of marine mammals that you would see down in the Antarctic. And we apologies if you had any glitches or playback issues with that video. We've got Katie sharing that direct link in the comments so you can watch that if it didn't work out for you here. But just a brief overview of some of the species that we would see down in the Antarctic. So, with that, I want to pass it over to Crystal to kind of dive into some of the stories of these different species that we would see down there.
Thank you so much for setting the stage so well too. I feel like I really was in the Antarctic there. I am excited to get to explore some of these species with you, but I would love to start with some Antarctic trivia. So, in just a moment, we're going to play a sound clip. And I want you to guess in the comments which animal you think made the noise that we're going to play. So, we're going to play that sound clip here. And I want you to guess if you think it was the crab eater seal, if it was the emperor penguin, the Weddell seal, or the Ross seal.
All right, so let's hear the sound. Everyone, take a listen.
Oh my goodness. Now, believe it or not, that one actually is a sound that was made by one of these animals. I know every time I hear it, I truly think it sounds like a laser in outer space or something. That sounds totally otherworldly, really. But that did come from an animal in the Antarctic. One of these 4 listed here. Oh my goodness. I'm seeing a lot of really good guesses so far. I'm so excited by these. Now, all 4 of these are really special Antarctic animals. I will give you a hint, though, that since we are the Marine Mammal Center, one of these animals doesn't quite belong. I love this. Great guesses. So, in fact, it is a seal. and it is the Weddell Seal. So if you guessed C or happen to know, it seemed like some of you really already knew this seal made that sound, which is really impressive. It was in fact the Weddell Seal or Weddell Seal. There's actually, fun fact, no right way to say it. So any way you feel like pronouncing that is the right way to say it. So great job, everybody. This one was the Weddell Seal. Now, to set the stage a little bit more and take sort of a look at where we are in the world, even though we all got to be there in Antarctica, this is our kind of diagram of pinnipeds of the world. So pinniped means flipper-footed. So on here you'll see pictures of both seals and sea lions, some notable ones from around the world and sort of where they are. So down all the way at the bottom, circled in red on our southern continent there of Antarctica is our Weddell seal. Now, as we were also mentioning earlier, these are not the only seals that live there. There are 6 seals that call the Antarctic their home. And here again is our cute little rendition of that Weddell seal. And you can see their fun fact that they use their teeth to carve holes in the ice, which we'll definitely get to because it is a very cool adaptation. Now, to give us a little bit of background on them, the Weddell seal is an Antarctic animal, and believe it or not, one of the best studied seals in the world. They've been being studied. There's a breeding colony that lives in the Ross Sea that's been being studied since about 1968, which is pretty incredible. In fact, on the right, you can see also a picture of some smiling faces that are actually folks from the Marine Mammal Center. We had conducted some field research there as well just a couple years ago, where we were looking at some of the adaptations of Weddell seal pups in order to survive in this incredibly harsh environment. And we'll dig more into that in a little bit too. But just some general Weddell seal stuff is that they are really big. And on the next slide, oh yes, you can see it's kind of a blown up picture a little bit, but not too much. They are huge, huge seals. They're one of the largest, coming in at about 10 feet long and over 1,000 pounds. They're also incredibly deep divers. They can go about 1,000 feet down and hold their breath for about 90 minutes. So while they're down there, they're foraging for all sorts of things. They'll eat Antarctic cod and silverfish. They'll eat other pelagic or open ocean species and even things like octopus. So they are down there sort of finding whatever they can here. And just like I'd mentioned earlier, we were there looking at the pups. They are the absolute cutest. So these little pups are being born from about September to November, which is actually, because it's the southern hemisphere, the summertime. That's their late spring to summer. So that's when it is probably going to be some of the warmest days in Antarctica. However, those days can still reach to be about minus 50 degrees. So they're very, very cold environments that these little pups are being born into. They are only about 55 pounds. That's about 5% of mom. So we've been really looking into how they are specially adapted to live in this sort of environment. Now you can kind of see here from this video and that picture, they look really fuzzy. They have a super thick lanugo coat of hair that they are initially born with that helps to insulate them by trapping air in their hair, kind of like a sea otter, if you're familiar at all with that. That helps insulate them a little bit against the cold, and mom can help act as a little bit of a windbreaker. Now, they'll stay with mom for about 5 to 6 weeks while they're nursing. They're drinking all that very nutritious milk that's about 50 to 60% fat so that they can get ready to start hunting on their own in those cold, cold waters, which they will start swimming in at only about 2 weeks old. Now, because they're really dependent on that ocean water and hunting, and also this ice that they are having their pups on, they create these breathing holes in the water, actually with their teeth in a process called reaming. So this is a little video of it that was captured that's pretty interesting. So we'll show about 30 seconds of this video here so that you can see what that reaming behavior looks like. So they are literally just using their teeth and scraping it along the ice in order to create that breathing hole that they're also using as kind of a ramp to get to and from being on land to pup and molt, and also being underwater to hold those territories. So, as you can imagine, rubbing your teeth all over sea ice can take its toll. So, this is actually, to clarify, two separate individuals that were surveyed through Polar Trek. So, this isn't like a before and after, but it is a great way to get to see some of the impact that that reaming behavior has on the individual's teeth. So, these Weddell seals can have a lifespan up to about 30 years. And so rubbing your teeth on ice for about 30 years can truly have a huge impact. Now, what I think I find most interesting about Weddell seals is that they actually don't hold territories on land, it's all underwater. So they actually are really interesting because their most aggressive behaviors are underwater. And so when they're on land, they're pretty docile. They also don't have any land predators. So it's because of this really passive nature that they are an incredible study species, because we don't have to worry as much as you might approaching some of the seals and sea lions, excuse me, that we have to be a little bit more careful up here in California when we're looking at those studies and seeing how we're doing that here. But because they are so dependent on that sea ice, even though their populations are really abundant right now, they are very, very susceptible to being under pressure for climate change and some of those warming waters and how that sort of interacts in our world. So, Laura actually has a different animal to highlight that has some of those similar problems.
Thank you, Crystal. And I'll also just take a quick moment because I noticed some really great questions coming in from the comments. And Ocean Fox asked, who are the longer divers, the Weddell seals or the elephant seals? And we're not going to answer that quite yet because we do have another fun trivia question coming up and we don't want to spoil the answer. So hold tight, Ocean Fox. We will get to that question.
That is the
Um,
perfect question.
it is very fitting, and we thought about that too. And then Pam also was asking how many Weddell seal pups do they have at a time? And just like a lot of the other marine mammals that we work with, they're really typically having one pup at a time. You can imagine in that super harsh Antarctic environment, it's a big investment for mom to have that pup, and she's really going to focus all her energy and attention on that one pup. And this is very common in other marine mammal species as well. Great question, Pam. All right. So Crystal was sharing that there is another marine mammal that I want to highlight that I've pictured here that also is really dependent on sea ice in the Antarctic. And even though when we think of Antarctic animals, you might not necessarily picture the humpback whale as the poster child of the Antarctic, but they do, specific populations migrate to the Antarctic because of that sea ice ecosystem and kind of the opportunities that are created there. So we'll talk more about that in just a second. But to kind of paint the picture of our humpback whales, which is one of our more common ones, certainly one that we work with up along the California coast in the Marine Mammal Center. We do some studies, observational studies of humpback whales that come through San Francisco Bay. And they're certainly kind of a well studied whale species. So you might recognize them for their iconic humpback. They're called that because they have this kind of arched back that looks like a hump and that shorter dorsal fin towards the back there. And they also are kind of distinct for their long flippers. Their single long flipper in the front there can get up to 15 feet long, just the flipper. And the humpback whale can get up to about 52 feet long. So they're a fairly large whale, but they're probably most well known for their song. So I did want to play what the humpback whale sounds like. So that beautiful kind of almost haunting, echoing song of the humpback whale is pretty well known. Hopefully sounds fairly familiar. And the humpback is also known for being a baleen whale. So, as opposed to something like an orca whale or killer whale or beluga that has sharp pointed teeth, the humpback has baleen, which is these long plates made of keratin that hang down from the top of their jaw. And this is a really important adaptation for the humpback whale, especially when we get to thinking about what they're eating down in the Arctic. So, I mentioned that there are distinct populations or groups of humpback whales around the world. You can see some of them pictured in this map here, where in the northern hemisphere, you've got a couple of populations, as well as in the southern hemisphere. And in my map here, you're seeing that the pink circles are representing the breeding grounds or the areas where they're having their babies. And then the blue dots are representing their feeding grounds. And then the connecting orange line here is showing you the migratory route that they're taking from their feeding grounds to the breeding grounds back and forth. So I wanted to focus specifically on the southern hemisphere and these populations of humpback whales that migrate down to the Antarctic every year. Now, the reason that they are migrating down to that really harsh Antarctic environment is because there's a lot of opportunity for feeding. So, some of these humpback whales will travel over 5,000 miles to reach the Antarctic waters. And this is going to be in the spring, of course, as soon as that ice starts melting and there's more access for those humpback whales. You might recall when we were talking about the ecosystem and the continent of Antarctica earlier that the ice melt and growth in the Antarctic changes seasonally. And those changes are actually the greatest seasonal change on the planet. So, with ice growing up to 2.5 miles in just one day. So the continent itself can double in size in just a number of weeks, which is incredible. So in the winter time, you can imagine any life that can, like the humpback whales that can migrate, they're going to flee from the Antarctic during those harsh winters. But that melting brings in new opportunities for feeding for the humpbacks. So, as that ice retreats, there's more access to tiny shrimp like crustaceans called krill, animal plankton, these little shrimp like creatures. And we're going to see what these Antarctic krill look like through this video. Let's take a look.
Krill are small crustaceans found throughout the ocean. They play an important role in the aquatic food chain, particularly in the Southern Ocean. Antarctic krill provide a vital food source for whales, seals, icefish, and penguins. These animals depend on eating large quantities of krill for survival in the harsh climate. For their own meals, Antarctic krill eat small plants like phytoplankton, as well as algae under the surface of sea ice. Krill have the ability to shrink their bodies and undergo long periods of starvation. These adaptations allow them to survive the winter months in the Antarctic. Krill travel in swarms so dense they can actually be seen from space. And it's estimated that the total weight of Antarctic krill is more than the weight of all humans on Earth. Pretty impressive for an animal the size of your pinky. And that's life with the ice for Antarctic krill.
So these tiny crustaceans, these tiny little krill, the size of your pinky nail, need to sustain a 52-foot long humpback whale. How is this possible? So luckily, humpback whales are especially adapted. They've got a great behavior to be able to eat all of these tiny krill. So humpbacks will do something called bubble netting, which is a feeding strategy where a group of humpback whales will kind of swim in a spiral motion or a circular motion. And simultaneously, as they're swimming, they're going to release air from their blowhole. And as that air bubbles up to the surface, it creates almost this wall of bubbles that's going to help encapsulate those dense groups of krill. And then the humpback whales from underneath can swim up, take a giant gulp from that dense ball of krill, taking in all the water and the krill at the same time. And then they're going to use that baleen, those keratin plates, to strain the water out and capture all of that krill in their mouth. And then they'll use their huge tongue to slurp all the krill and swallow it down. So, luckily, these humpback whales have this really specialized feeding strategy called bubble netting that allows them to get these dense clusters of krill so they can sustain themselves. So, good strategy for those migrating humpback whales. But I want to take a moment to go back and talk about the krill itself because the krill plays a really integral role in regulating the Earth's climate, which is so funny to think about how it's possible that something so small could play such a vital role. So, if we recall from that video, it briefly shared that krill are getting its energy or it's eating the plant plankton or phytoplankton. And just like plants on land, the phytoplankton or plants in the ocean are taking in carbon dioxide to produce oxygen through photosynthesis, right? So, when krill are eating this plankton or these plant plankton, krill then swims down to the lower depths of the ocean and they drop their waste that is full of the carbon that they've absorbed from that plant plankton. Then we think about those humpback whales that are eating the krill. They're also kind of taking in some of that carbon, and it can stay within that whale for decades, basically creating what we call a carbon sink because it's absorbing carbon down into the ocean. And so basically, once that whale passes away and sinks to the bottom of the ocean, that carbon again is being sunk down. So, in a way, krill are like this giant conveyor belt, constantly drawing down carbon, moving carbon from the surface down. And the carbon that's stored in the deep ocean through this process is the same as taking 35 million cars off the road each year. That's how much carbon is being taken in through these krill. So, who knew that something so small like krill were so vitally important to regulating our climate and drawing in carbon? And all the more reason to just protect not only krill, but this ecosystem, the humpback whales, and everything that relies on this interconnected web to help make sure we're regulating our climate. So, speaking of this, when we think about the Earth's climate, as we burn fossil fuels like coal, oil, and gas, we release excess carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And there's only so much carbon that all of those krill can help sink down. So, this excess carbon is acting like a heat trapping blanket and it's warming up the land, the air, and the sea. And you can imagine that warming waters in places like the Arctic can definitely impact the ecosystem. So, particularly when we think about warmer waters running, those warmer currents running underneath the glaciers and that glacial ice that's in the Antarctic, it can lead to melting that isn't part of that normal cycle in the Antarctic. And that can lead to things like sea level rise, or it could impact how much krill there are. So it's really important that we're doing our best to regulate all of that excess carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And we'll talk about ways that we can do that a little bit later. But I'm going to pass it over to Crystal to share about another species that actually is impacted by things like sea level rise.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we are actually going to swap back to our pinnipeds. We're going back to seals here. So it was a fun cetacean break there. Thank you for the whale. But heading back to seals, we have circled down at the bottom there our southern elephant seals. Now, they might look a little familiar if you know some of our work, because we do work with their northern counterpart. So, looking at this map, if you go up into the northern hemisphere up top and slightly to the left, you'll see one that looks pretty familiar, has that big proboscis or that big floppy nose looking thing right on the front there. And that is our northern elephant seal. So there are two different kinds of elephant seals. Now I'm going to focus in a little bit more on our southern elephant seal here, being that they are in the Antarctic. Can see this cute rendition again and notice that they are written down as the star divers of the seal world. So that leads me to my next trivia question for you. Some more Antarctic trivia here. Um, is how deep do you think southern elephant seals dive? So go ahead and put your answers in the chat. Now, it is pretty similar to the northern elephant seal. So, if you happen to have that statistic off the top of your head, they're very similar. Um, but one of them is a little bit deeper of a diver than the other. Oh, let's take a peek. Oh my goodness, I'm seeing some great answers so far in the chat. We've got 4,000, 65, 7,000, ooh, 10,000 feet. This is a lot of fun. I love this.
Some good guesses.
This is some very good guesses. This is wonderful. I'm going to give you about another 30 seconds or so to put your guesses in. All right. Oh, some other good ones. Now, our southern elephant seals dive 6,500 feet down. So if you guessed B, you are right. And if you didn't, that's okay too, because I gave you a lot of really interesting numbers there. So great job. And just as a little bit of a compare and contrast here, you can see our graphic there of the deepest diving mammals. So 10,000 feet up there is a little bit more than our deepest ever recorded dive of a Cuvier's beaked whale that got just 200 feet shy. So 9,800 feet down is the deepest recorded dive of a marine mammal ever. So our southern elephant seals are doing really, really good. They're at that over 6,000 feet mark is really incredible. Now I'm going to dive in a little bit deeper into them and give you just some background. They're kind of like the superstars when it comes to seals and especially our Antarctic seals here.
And hopefully, too, this answered the question from Ocean Fox, who was wondering who the deeper divers were, Weddell seals or elephant seals. And the clear answer here is the elephant seals.
So, our southern elephant seals are the largest seal in the entire world. They are just absolutely massive. So, males are reaching lengths of about 20 feet long and weights of more than 8,000 pounds. That's about twice the size of their northern counterpart that we've ever been able to see up here. And if you want a different animal to compare it to, that's about 6 times the size of a polar bear. So these animals, they're really, really big. You can kind of see at the bottom, there's a graphic from National Geographic there that shows the size of an elephant seal compared to about a 6 foot tall person there. So that's what that is. And also going back to just them being just such extreme divers, they are truly dominating the Antarctic. They also dominate the range here. So you can kind of see on the left side in blue, all of that is the Southern Ocean, and all of that is the range of the southern elephant seal. And then on the right is the range of our northern elephant seal. So you can see it's a lot smaller, but it does really nicely coincide with our California coast and some of our 600-mile range that we service here at the Marine Mammal Center. So we tend to see those northern elephant seals. Now, one of the issues that is affecting these animals, as Laura had mentioned earlier, is sea level rise, which is making those breeding and pupping beaches smaller. So, just like she was mentioning, as we're burning those fossil fuels like coal and gas, it releases that excess carbon into the atmosphere. Now, as it builds up, it creates a blanket around the earth that traps in heat, warming our land, air, and sea. Now, as it's warming because of thermal expansion of the water and also ice melting, the sea level is rising up, making those beaches a lot smaller, making it a lot easier for these pups to get either washed away from storms or because it's more crowded on those beaches, it harder for mom to find her pup. That's leading to some really underweight and malnourished pups that are really needing our help. And we think that this is probably what happened with a patient we had just this past year named Madeleine. So meet Madeleine. This is her looking a lot better. She's very cute. Now, she was rescued in February of last year, all the way down in San Luis Obispo, so down in Southern California, at that field office that we have there. And she was brought all the way up to Sausalito into our main hospital, where she was cared for and learned how to feed herself and hunt on her own. She was admitted at less than a month old. And in fact, even under what we expect to be a healthy birth weight, she was only about 65 pounds, and they are typically born at about 75 pounds. So she was in treatment because we think she got separated from mom and for some malnutrition. But after about 4 months of care with us, where she was putting on all of that good blubber, reaching her goal weight of about 300 pounds, and learning how to feed herself and how to hunt for fish, she was released back into her ocean home with some other northern elephant seals. So here's a cute picture of that release that happened just in June. So she graduated fish school and could figure it all out on her own. And that's really our goal here at the Marine Mammal Center is to have that release of these animals back into their ocean home. Now, we were so happy that Madeline was able to come into our care and that she got all the help that she needed. But we really are striving to make sure that all elephant seal pups are doing well without necessarily needing our intervention. And the best way to tackle this problem is to start back at the source. So, thinking back to our relationship with those fossil fuels. So, consider things that can reduce your amount of fossil fuels. Try carpooling, walking, or even eating a more plant-based diet because this is something that affects everyone across the world because we do have just one ocean that connects us all. Now, the nice thing is that this puts us in a really unique position to help. No matter where you live, whether you're landlocked or right on the coast, you can make a difference. Now, the ocean has this really incredible sort of natural carbon sink ability where it's able to mitigate some of those effects that we see from our climate change, things like sea level rise, just like Laura was mentioning with that krill. So it's really important that we do what we can to protect the ocean and protect its ability to sort of mitigate some of those effects that we see of climate change.
Absolutely, Crystal. And when we think back, we talked about earlier how only 5% of the Southern Ocean is protected currently. And hopefully today we've kind of expanded and learned about why it's important to expand those protections, especially for this habitat that, we might not think of on a daily basis as being so vital to our planet. But turns out there are lots of interconnected pieces here that need to work together. So, in general, too, if we zoom out, only just over 2% of the world's ocean is fully protected. So, we can do more to protect our ocean, our planet as a whole. And right now, our current president, Joe Biden, has set a goal for conserving 30% of America's land and waters by 2030. So, this is a really great goal. And while it's not the whole world, at least it's a piece of it. And so, this campaign is known as the 30 by 30 campaign. And it's essentially establishing more of those national parks, marine protected areas, which you can think of as national parks underwater, protecting those areas. It's promoting more community based conservation, and this has so many benefits for marine mammals and people alike. And the Marine Mammal Center, as an organization, we signed on in support of the 30 by 30 campaign because this means advancing global ocean conservation and, of course, protecting our marine mammals and people. So, hopefully, we can move towards more protection of these really important ecosystems and do some of those great things that Crystal had mentioned to reduce our own impact on climate change by rethinking our relationship with fossil fuels in the way that you can, that makes sense for you. So, with that, want to thank everyone so much for joining today. And hopefully, you got to learn a little bit more about the Antarctic marine mammals. We got to talk about some really interesting species, the Weddell seals, the migrating humpback whales, and some of these really closely connected northern elephant seals and southern elephant seals. So, we hope that you enjoyed. We hope that you join us as well for our next Marine Mammal Monday, which will be February 7th at 4 o'clock, same time, same place. But we'll be talking all about marine mammal mega moms. So if you want to learn more about how marine mammal moms are some of the best moms on the planet, be sure to join us next month on February 7th for Marine Mammal Monday to learn a little bit more. So with that, I'll take another look through the comments here for any last questions. And I see that Pam was wondering, isn't February the month that the elephant seals come in at their birth? Yes, Pam, that is correct. And that's exactly why it happened to be the time of year that we rescued Madeleine, that northern elephant seal that Crystal was sharing the story with us. So that is the typical season that the Marine Mammal Center does rescue a lot of northern elephant seals. At times in our history, we've had 100 elephant seal pups on site that we've been taking care of. So that is a very common season for us to see those young pups. And it's a lot of the same story. A lot of them that accidentally got separated from mom too soon, or and then they became malnourished, and we take them into the center to fatten them up, teach them how to eat that fish, and then release them back home. So great question, Pam. All right. So I think that's all of our questions for now. Thanks everybody for joining. It was so great to be with you here for this Marine Mammal Monday. Thank you, Crystal, for presenting with me today, and we're excited to see more of you on coming Marine Mammal Mondays. So thanks so much, everyone, and have a great rest of your month. Take care.
Thanks, Laura, and thank you everybody so much for coming and listening.
Bye bye.